Like most of you watching this, I grew up with Pokemon and very clearly have not grown out of it. I played all of the main games and most of the spin-offs, but now that I'm an adult and have boring things to do like tax evasion, I don't have the time to memorize every single Pokemon like I used to. We're picking out the single most forgettable Pokemon from each gen, and since I feel kinda bad for these abandoned little guys, I'm gonna make a poster featuring all 9 of them at the very end. We all know how much the Pokemon Company loves Gen 1, with all the remakes and the merch and the clothes. All the awful clothes. So it's safe to say that no Gen 1 Pokemon is that forgettable because the Pokemon Company just won't let us forget. But there is one Pokemon that sticks out to me as a lesser remembered one out of the bunch, and that is Pikachu. Fear is just kind of there. It's a very simple Pokemon like most of them in Gen 1, but when there's already a cooler bird line that is infinitely more memorable thanks to being on the very first route and also getting so much more love in future generations, it's not hard to see how Fearow might not always be in the brain. Some runner-ups that have a Gen 1 were Seal and Parasect. Seal because it's a seal called Seal with no distinct features other than Seal, and Parasect is cool and all, but when was the last time you saw Parasect art on your timeline? As far as Gen 1 goes, those are gonna be my top picks, but let me know in the comments if you think somebody else is more forgettable. After looking through the Johto deck, there was only one Pokemon that stood out to me as a Pokemon that just doesn't stand out, and that is none other than Sunkern. Again, no hate to these Pokemon, these are just the most forgettable ones, but I mean, who can really blame you for forgetting the pre-Evo to some Flora that had the worst stats in the entire franchise other than Solo Wishy-Washy that requires a Sunstone to evolve? Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I was stingy with my items as a kid, and there's no way I would have even thought about giving this thing an evolution stone, and I'm gonna be real, I forgot that Sunkern even had an evolution. I remembered some Flora just fine thanks to this Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DVD that I had growing up, but I swear I just never thought twice about Sunkern. Looking at him now, that this is actually kinda cute, so I'm very excited to make some Sunkern art later on. I want to preface this by saying that Gen 3 is straight up the best generation of Pokemon designs, like hands down. I'm literally working a video about that right now, so it's probably going to see that, but despite that, there are still a few forgotten faces. Runner-ups include the fossil Pokemon Anorith and Lileep. As far as fossil Pokemon go, they literally never ever get talked about, which kind of sucks. I think they're pretty cool. Chimecho is for sure the most forgettable if you didn't watch the anime, but if you did, then there is no way you're able to forget James's bestie. Surskit and Masquerain don't get talked about too often either, but they're at least pretty easily obtainable in most Pokemon games, but even if you haven't seen them around in the games, you've at least definitely seen this. But the number one most forgettable Gen 3 Pokemon is gotta be Huntail, man. Like, first of all, it evolves from Clamperl, like, who? And to evolve it, you need to trade it holding a deep sea tooth. I don't know about you, but I have quite literally never used a Huntail on any of my teams while playing through Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, or any other game for that matter, and I feel like most of you watching haven't either. If you did though, let me know if it was any good. I like hearing stories of people using really random Pokemon in their playthroughs. I have a feeling that some people might be questioning why I picked Huntail over Golbat as the most forgettable since they're from the same Evo line, and it is weird because Huntail's design is so much more funky, but in a weird way, I feel like it almost makes it stand out less. Also, each picture I see of Huntail just makes it look more and more fake, and while Golbat looks a bit more generic and blends in more with the other fish, I feel like that makes it weirdly more memorable. This is the gen that I grew up with. I literally used to read one of those oversized Pokédex books on a daily basis and memorize them by their damn Pokédex number. Shout out to my boy 447. I'll always remember you. Do you know who I won't always remember though? Phione! I remember Manaphy from the Ranger games and the movies, but Phione? The pre-Evo? Aura from 20 minutes into the future here. Turns out that Phione isn't even the pre-Evo to Manaphy. Manaphy can breed to create Phione, but then those Phione can't then turn into Manaphy. Apparently there's some lore behind it, but I can't believe I literally just found out about this now. I feel like my entire life's been a lie. Again, quite a few runner-ups here, but whether you consider them forgettable or not just kinda depends on your experience with the franchise. Originally, I'm gonna put Lumineon as the undisputed #1 most forgettable Pokemon of all time from every single region ever. But whenever people talk about the most forgettable Pokemon, they always come up in a discussion, making them memorable exclusively because they're not memorable. The reason that I want to put them up so high though goes all the way back to my very first Platinum playthrough back to when I was a kid. Like most kids being told to catch them all, I wanted to catch them all, or at least encounter them all so I could unlock the national dex. I kid you not, the only Pokemon left on my list was Lumineon, and the only reason I missed it is because I skipped what's the only damn trainer in the entire game with a Lumineon just north of Sunnyshore's City. The fact that I didn't even think to just evolve a Finneon means I was either a really stupid kid or Lumineon was just that forgettable. Also, Overcast, Cherry, and the Burmy Land are probably up there somewhere too. I bet there's at least one person watching this right now that didn't even know Burmy evolved into all of these. You know what was interesting, since it was the only region to feature only new Pokemon. Surely that means they're gonna be all super memorable and we can just skip this and go to Gen 6. Of course not, you idiot! Tell me the last time that you sat down and thought, man, remember Electric? Never! That has quite literally never happened. And if you did remember Electric, I can guarantee you that it took at least 3 Google searches to actually find it because his name is spelled so stupidly. This is honestly one of the worst cases of middle evolution syndrome and could honestly either be removed entirely or just made into the first stage Evo and have Tynamo just removed entirely and nothing would change. At least Electros is one of the coolest electric types of all time. I can at least give credit where credit is due. Runner-ups include the Vanillite line, which I swear I never see anybody talk about other than when people are complaining about how Pokemon fell off because they started using inanimate objects. As if there hasn't been a thing since Gen 1, and Meloetta Pirouette. As not if that last one counts as technically just a form change, but it's my list so I can do whatever I want. X and Y are the final Pokemon games that I have hundreds of hours in, so this is the final gen that I'm confident people agree with me on. After this point, I just kinda hope I don't start a fight in the comments. Starting with the runner-ups, you've got Pokemon like Malamar that I would absolutely not have remembered if it wasn't for their batshit insane evolution method. Like, you have to get it to level 30, get your DS, and turn it upside down! Other runner-ups include Slurpup, which I never see anyone talk about despite how cute it is, and Swirlix, which I literally just now learned has feet. This is harrowing new information. But the most forgettable Pokemon for this gen, for me, has got to be Binnacle. Not only can I guarantee that this is nobody's favorite Pokemon. Don't look at me like you're a Binnacle stan, I know you aren't. But did you know this isn't even Binnacle's true form? This is a Binnacle. According to the Pokedex, 2 Binnacle live in 1 stone, so while this is a Binnacle, this is also a Binnacle. Now this is both the least memorable Kalos Pokemon and my least favorite Pokemon. Shiinotic. If you put a gun to my head and told me to name this thing, I would just take the gun and shoot myself. It's literally one of the only Pokemon that I straight up just didn't know the name of even when looking at a picture. That's it, it's just Shiinotic. Some might say that the Ultra Beasts are a little bit forgettable if you didn't get that far into the game, and when I don't remember a single Ultra Beast typing, I'll be damned if I forget the name of a motherfucker called Guzzlord. I played through Pokemon Shield mostly over the course of 1 weekend and then never again, so that might slightly skew my opinion here, but I do think there are still a handful of forgettable Gen 8 Pokemon for sure. Pinchurchin. I got it confused with Pyukumuku, which is just objectively cooler. Silicobra. I straight up forgot that Sandaconda had a pre-evo, but I doubt that I'll forget it again since his name is literally just Silly Cobra. Dracloak. Middle evolution syndrome for sure. It's just a slightly smaller Dragapult with less ammo. And the least memorable Galar Pokemon award goes to Arrokuda! I remembered Barrascuda just fine, but the fact that I literally used an Arrokuda in my Violet Design Lock and designed a logo for it and still forgot that it existed? Yeah, I don't think it gets much less memorable than that. Maybe it's recency bias, but I actually remembered most of these Pokemon pretty well. I low-key did forget about Glimmer and Shudu, especially the fact that Shudu evolves into Grafaiai, but these don't have the same forgettable energy as the most forgettable Paldea Pokemon. That title goes to Pormo. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Pormo. I'm fully convinced that the only reason this thing is a slightly lighter shade than the other two is so people could tell them apart, because other than that, this thing has no distinguishing features. If poor me stood up, that would just be Pormo. If poor Mott got a worse haircut, that would just be Pormo. You serve no purpose. The only reason I actually slightly remembered it is because when I first saw it in the wild, I thought I found a shiny Pormy. So imagine my immense disappointment when it turns out it was just a discolored Pormy that can stand up. Is that a shiny? Or is it just the lighting? Is that a shine? There's no way. Oh, is this a different Pokemon? Pormo? is like a different thing? Because they look the exact same, right? Middle evolution syndrome to the fullest extent. Now that we have a forgettable lineup, it's time to make the most forgettable piece of art imaginable. If any of these Pokemon are somehow your favorite, then I'm glad that I can make the first piece of fan art that you're seeing of them in years. This poster note right here is the basic outline of what I'm trying to make. Going into this, I knew that I wanted to do more than just illustrate the Pokemon themselves. Like, if you forgot about Huntail and then saw an illustration of it, you'd probably remember Huntail. But if you saw an abstracted Huntail, maybe like 3 shapes, I feel like it helps lean more into the forgotten nature of the Pokemon and helps make the piece a bit more interesting when you try and decipher what's what. Sunkern was nice and easy. A small, simple creature. You can easily tell who this is even without a face. Huntail I was actually quite proud of. I think the little touch of orange on the head is just about all you need to tell this little weird fish apart from the rest. Electric. I mean, he's wiggly like Huntail, but this looks awful because there's no way to separate his face from his body. I'll come back to this one later. Pharaoh? Okay, let's just start over. We have to use a style that works consistently across all 9 of these weirdos. I felt like if we can make a Binnacle look good, then we can make any of them look good. So I tried tackling this one with a more stylized outline look. After a while, it actually started getting somewhere. I also took out all the color too to really just focus on the actual shape of the Pokemon. I'm pretty happy with this. And would you look at that, Sunkern works perfectly in this new style too. I was scared of illustrating Pharaoh because it's got a lot more going on with it with all the feathers and wings and such, so I decided to just stick with the head for this one. Making the hair out of basic triangles and only rounding out the corners when absolutely necessary made this turn out to be one of my absolute favorites. Phione is really easy to illustrate in my normal style, but that is not an option here. I tried squishing some of the circles, but it looked too out of place compared to some of the others, so instead I kept everything as perfectly round circles and added a little hair thingy behind the body. Yes, I know they have no arms here. Yes, we're gonna come back to this later. Electric was an absolute bastard to work with. This is why nobody likes or remembers you. I'll be dealing with you again later too. Shiinotic ended up looking like a toad from Mario, but I guess that's what happens when you're a little mushroom man. I was perfectly happy with Arrokuda's body after just a few attempts, but then quickly realized that any fins that I added to the front or back just weren't really necessary since they don't really stand out as a key part of this design. What does stand out though are the arrows. Arrokuda, oh my god! And the little mustache. Pawmo was really funny right off the bat because I went to Google them for more reference images and they immediately thought that I was talking about Pawmi. Like, you can't make this shit up. Anyway, this was another one where it made more sense to illustrate just the head because if I illustrated the entire body, the proportions would be super off compared to the rest of the illustrations. You got basic circles and pointed circles. Nothing crazy going on here. Now that I had them all done, mostly, it was time to put them all together. Referring back to my highly detailed sketch from earlier, I sorted them out into a grid, added some text, and while I might not be fully finished yet, I felt like I was onto something. I absolutely love how the colors interact with the outlines and how some of them bleed into the other sections. The main things we gotta fix are these and the sizing, so everything is completely uniform. Electric was just not working, so I decided to try and change perspectives, and would you look at that? Horrifying, but at least it's more recognizable now. With Phione, I ended up going back to squish circles, but they were all squished in the exact same way, so it still fit the style. I also made the hair come out to the side, so you can actually tell what it is this time. And now, a compilation of different layouts. Circles. Fine, I guess, but I think the squares look better. Reshuffled. Pharaoh actually works really well with the beak peeking out of the top, but the rest of it just feels Type colors. The colors just look worse here and I don't like it. Downsizing. It looks less cluttered now, but I kind of miss the color overlap of the outlines. Wavy circles. Better than regular circles, and I do really like how the orange leaks into Huntail's fin here, but it's still missing something. Less circles. Gives me New York subway station vibes. Top 3 layouts for sure. Quarter circles? Now we're talking! This gives the same clean look as the last one while still letting some of the outlines overlap with the background. At this point, I've been working on the poster for about 5 hours, and if anyone's ever made anything ever, then you know how easily you can miss super obvious details since you're so absorbed in your own little world. I figured I'd show my artist go from Pot Bite my progress to see if she was rocking with it so far, and like usual, the piece was immediately transformed to be 10 times better.
It almost looks like there's a star over here. Just move that point and see how it looks.
Thank you. Shouts out to the Forgotten Line for inspiring one of my favorite pieces. I can guarantee that you won't be forgotten again. Proly. I'm definitely making prints of these at some point, but in the meantime, check out my other Pokemon prints, original prints, and stickers. Let me know which Pokemon you remember the least in the comments, if you can even remember them, and I'll see you guys soon with another cool art project. Peace.